God, it's happening. I can't believe it. And we would throw events with teenagers there. And I mean, our most successful event, we had like 400 something kids show up, and it was amazing. And then it all fell apart. And so that year was really an identity crisis for me. It's like, God, I thought this is what you wanted me to do. And then it all got taken away from me. And as a man, the things that I really want is to feel needed, loved, respected, valued, like I'm leaving a mark on this earth. I need to create those in my home. And first and foremost, that's what I'm called to do. That's my purpose now that I'm a husband, that I'm a father. That's my purpose. As I look at Jesus's life, his life, he came into existence to go to Jerusalem. He's always on his way to Jerusalem. He's always on his way to die. So I think what's shifting for me, what I'm rebelling against right now, is just this continued awareness of how selfish I am. You could be a great dad and not believe anything, but to really truly know who you are, I'm just convicted that I'm a child of God, and so is everyone else. One day, all three of us are going to be old men looking in the mirror. Like, do I want to look into my own eyes? And if I do, and what do I want to feel about myself, then it matters how I show up today.
Channeling some Hawaii energy today, guys. That's what's on tap coming up next. So let's go. Hey guys, welcome in once again to the Next Man Up podcast. So good as always to have you along for another episode. You know this, my name is Mark. John will be joining me shortly, and we're both honored to bring you yet another episode today. Our guest for this episode is Ned Schaut. He's 37. He's been married for about 17 years. He's got 5 kids. He lives in Hawaii, and here's what Ned likes to say about himself. I want to make the world a better place. I always have. I really love people. I believe the communities of our world have potential to experience more joy, love, peace, fun, and adventure. From my perspective, Ned's perspective, the problem is a lack of men. Where are all the good men? If men were engaged, especially men who have found themselves as fathers and husbands, I believe we would experience more. I've found my purpose and my life's fulfillment through the way of fatherhood. Just from that, I'm sure you can see the connection and why we're talking to Ned today. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. We cover a number of different topics, like the 2 words that are meaningful to him and his journey and how he's showing up. We talk about his story and the experience he had realizing that his kids, his home, his family was not getting the best of him. We talk about the influence of his dad in growing up, as well as initiation and rite of passage, and spend a good amount of time talking about his new book coming soon, The Adventure of Fatherhood. Guys, I was excited to have this conversation. I know I say that all the time, but it's true. I really wanted to talk to Ned. I'm excited about the book that is launching here this month, and to bring him and his story to you and introduce you to this resource so that you can grow as a father, and you can also be a blessing and a gift through a gift to another father in your life. We'll explain what that means as this episode unfolds. So let's get to that. Here's John and me talking to Ned Schaut. Well, Ned, super excited to have this conversation with you today, man. Thank you for joining us from Hawaii and for giving us some of your time today. Appreciate it. And like I said, I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Anytime to pause and talk fatherhood and family is I'm good with. Love it.
So let's go. I want to start with this in an episode that we just released. I think it's last week's episode. I started similarly. There are 2 words that mean a lot to you, And there are two words that we don't often use on this show. It's rebel and create. I'd like you
Hmm.
to start there. Tell me what those words mean to you, and what they've become and how they've shaped who you are.
Yeah, so growing up, I had this vision for my life that I was going to open a youth center. And I felt this, I grew up in the church and I felt this constant like God has a purpose, God has a purpose, and to almost to a detriment, because I put my sole purpose on like doing this thing for
Mm,
God.
mm.
And so this thing I was going to create was this epic youth center, and I talk about it in my book Rebel and Create. That's kind of what the book is all about. And it was coming to life in 2015, like this youth center. It was a 36,000 square foot building that this woman was going to give to me. It already had $1.5 million spent on it for a skate park inside it, and just the stars aligned. She was going to give it to me. I used to go there every day and walk around the building and pray and be like, God, it's happening. I can't believe it. And we would throw events with teenagers there. And I mean, our most successful event, we had like 400 something kids show up,
Wow.
and it was amazing. And then it all fell apart. And so that year was really an identity crisis for me. It's like, God, I thought this is what you wanted me to do, and then it all got taken away from me. And so we lived in Northern California at the time, and I'd go to the beach on some retreats for myself and just go walk around Northern California beaches like, what the heck? And I don't know the exact time that Rebel and Create popped into my head, but during that season of life, there was this realization that there's these five little kids at home who love and adore me and who want my attention. And I was a great dad to them, but they didn't get my best time,
Mm-hmm.
energy, and
Mm.
creativity. I was giving that to this new era youth community and this thing. And my wife was supportive, but that got taken away. So the idea Rebel and Create was born in that season of life. And the idea is to rebel against this idea that my core value, my true identity, my purpose really is to do this thing outside of my home. And as a man, the things that I really want is to feel needed, loved, respected, valued, like I'm leaving a mark on this earth. I need to create those in my home. And first and foremost, that's what I'm called to do. That's my purpose now that I'm a husband, that I'm a father. That's my purpose. So, I still think it'd be great to build things, build business, build outreach, all that, but it has to be secondary to the home. So that's Rebel and Create. Now it could be applied to a lot of things. Rebel against the being on your cell phone at the dinner table so that I can create, family conversations. But for me, that's where the terms were born.
So I wonder if you look back in your life, do you see the rebellion energy, the rebellious energy there just as part of how you're wired, and it kind of coalesced in that moment in 2015, or was this really a new discovery for you, do you think?
Well, I would say that rebellion is a part of every man's heart, like to be wild, to fight, to rebel, not to destroy something, but to go out and have a fight for your life. I feel like every man has it. So yes, I would say that the desire to fight and be in the game, like watching Robin Hood or Creed or Batman or whatever movie you want, like I resonate with that character who wants to go fight. So, but then have I been rebellious? I was a big mama's boy, and was I rebellious as a kid? In some aspects, but more like fun rebellion, like
Hmm.
throwing water balloons at security guards, stuff like that. Not like, I
Things that
don't know.
can't get you into too much trouble.
Yeah, not like, stealing thousands of dollars worth of items.
Yeah, and this is maybe a setup to a question that we'll get to down the road, but it's interesting to me how God takes our wiring and continues to allow us to explore it. John Eldredge talks about he continues to initiate us, and so part of me wondered if that moment in 2015 was when the word really crystallized into purpose and definition, even if that energy, and not in a bad way, Ned, not like a troublemaker, but just that masculine energy had been bubbling and bubbling, and then it really clarified for you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of where I was going with that question.
Yeah, and I'll answer it like this then. I mean, I've always wanted to go against the grain, from something stupid like a teacher telling me, yeah, you're not really great at math, you shouldn't join this other class, to just doing it to prove them wrong. Or my mom saying, yeah, I don't know if you should learn guitar because you already have a lot going on, so learn guitar. So I do think that there's a rebellious aspect to me. I think that it's such a part of who I am that I just assume every man feels the same way. And same with the creative part, right? Like Adam was put into the garden to create and to continue with this gift that God gave him to build upon it. So in some aspects, I think every man has that ability and desire, but it's again such a part of me that, I'll get up every day at 4 a.m. and write for an hour so that I can create a book and create a journal and create a kid's book. And now I got a girls' kids book that's coming out too. So the fruit, I guess, for what rebel and create means to me is definitely like an above and beyond effort, I guess, compared to what most people may be doing. And so I don't know if that kind of answers the question more in the effort that I'm putting into those words.
Yeah, I love it. So today, as we're talking, where are you rebelling and creating? You alluded maybe to the book for fathers with daughters, but where are you rebelling and creating intentionally today?
Yeah, man, this is a good question. I just wrote 2 days ago on a sheet of paper and taped it to my mirror, a prayer that I'm trying to pray every day that says, God, what does it say? Lord, help my capacity to love increase. So, Lord, help my capacity to love increase. I think, as I look at Jesus's life, his life, he came into existence to go to Jerusalem. He's always on his way to Jerusalem. He's always on his way to die. So I think what's shifting for me, what I'm rebelling against right now, is just this continued awareness of how selfish I am, this continued awareness of how much I spend time thinking about myself. Like, what do I want to eat? What do I want to do right now? I got 5 kids and a wife. So there's this conflict all the time between what they want and what I want. And how often am I manipulatively or strategically, is the word I would use in my head, making it so my life is comfortable and what I want. So what I'm rebelling against is I'm really trying to die to myself in this season of like what is best for Ned, and it's like an example for me to think, how is Brooklyn, my 16-year-old, how is she viewing today? Like through her eyes, what did today look like? And so trying to do that a little bit more with each of my kids and my wife, because if I don't, then I'm just the hero of my story and everybody's living in my world. And I want to try and put myself in their world. So it's going to be constant, right? But that's my rebellion right now, is putting myself in my kids' shoes, rebelling against my own desires and my wife's shoes, and trying to see from their world and then show up for them in their story versus expecting them to show up in my story like I'm the hero. I want to be the sage. I want to be the person that's helping them on their journey versus just them making me look like a great dad and husband or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, right on. I like it. That's good stuff.
But again, it's like a deep wrestle because I suck at it, and it's just going to be this constant dive to keep going deeper and deeper in that and wrestling with myself. And I kind of think that's just the journey of life, right? Is to continue to become less. And so I'm rebelling against myself and hoping to create more community. And really the word is connection. I'm trying to create more connection, especially with my family.
So good, man. So good.
Ned, what you just said pretty much captures the conversation I had with the coaching client yesterday. He's a 35-year-old dad who wanted to talk about his frustration with parenting, fathering his 7-year-old son, who he wants to, have this perfect little son, and that's not how he behaves, and he gets frustrated with himself. And we landed on the word servant. What does it mean to serve your child versus father, teach, all the other kind of words? That seems to sound similar to what you just described that you're wrestling with. Is that an accurate description? Serving?
Yeah, I would say so. So I'm thinking about my youngest is 10 and just having some troubles with her right now. And so I it's hard because I'm trying to find the balance of serving her, but also disciplining her.
Right. Right.
And that is a part of me serving her, is that I would provide discipline so that she doesn't suck as an adult. But yeah, I think that is, I mean, if I'm supposed to be like Jesus, and Jesus was, he's got down and washed the feet as an example, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, but it's hard. It's hard to do. It's a simple concept, but it's hard to execute because we are selfish.
And in a way, it connects to the other word of rebel, because this is a twist in my brain, but if you're so bent, fathers are so bent because they're taught to be be the leaders and be the directors and disciplinarian, and suddenly you throw in the word servant, it's like that sounds like the opposite. So it makes sense that it's a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge, and until your kid's gone, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be a whole new set of challenges when that comes.
No doubt. So speaking of kids, I want to take you back to your childhood. I'm curious, what role did your father play in your life and in the man that you are today?
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know. Everybody's story is interesting. So my parents are still married, 39 years. That's the best gift they ever gave me, was showing it's possible. My mom is strong faith believer. My dad is 100% opposite, in the sense that he just doesn't believe there's a God, and it's foolishness. What my dad taught me, though, is to go outside. He gave my brother and I a lot of leeway to go outside and play, turn off the TV. We didn't have cable. He was a high school English teacher. And then he was off for summer, so he took us canoe camping and took us to Yellowstone and Yosemite. And so he took us outdoors a lot. So he kind of gave me that adventurous edge. He's also like one of the most fun people. Wrestle on the floor with you, play on the, be a kid, go pick up worms and build dams and make airplanes. And so he does that with my kids. And I think that may be one of the greatest gifts is just to be playful. And so I'm playful with my kids, and it's probably from him. And then last thing that's just really an interesting phase right now is when I was in 7th, 8th grade, my dad had brain surgery, and everyone said he was going to die, never work again, all this stuff. He was 39 when that happened, and I'm 39 now. And he, for his master's, so after the brain surgery, he got his master's degree. And for his thesis, he wrote a book essentially on his re-finding himself after his brain surgery. And I'm reading that right now as a 39-year-old, and he was 39. And I'm learning a ton from him right now by reading his journal entries and his writing about this. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to dig into anything, but that's just a few things.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that we could dig into, but I'm curious, given the differences in faith persuasions between mom and dad, how you ended up as the Jesus follower that you are today. Because so much of what we hear, what we're told, is that the father is so influential in shaping the kids, and yet at some point you made a decision toward Christ. When did that happen, and how did that come to be for you?
So my mom grew up Catholic, and then at some point when she was pregnant with me or first had me, she started going to Pentecostal churches in Los Angeles. And so then growing up, that's just what I went to. And then my parents, interesting is they sent me to a Seventh-day Adventist school for middle school and high school because it was the only like Christian school around. And my dad, interesting that he even wanted me to go there, but he wanted me to be around kids whose parents were like doctors and doing things with their lives. So that was his intention for sending me there. So I didn't get maybe stuck in a small town or small town mindset. So I would say that it was just always a part of my life. I just always knew who I was. I always just knew I was a child of God from a little kid. I mean, sure, there's a moment I remember at like 10 or 11 or 12 where I like went up to the altar and gave my life to God, but I don't really know that that's necessarily, I don't really feel like that's an accurate portrayal of that's when it all happened because I just always knew who I was. So, you know, what I believe is that everybody's God's child. They're just either acting like it or they're not, or accepting it or not. So, I do think that my dad not being, I have a desire for my dad to be a leader in that aspect, and he's just not, yet. So it did, in a positive note, pushed me to look for mentors to serve that role. So I was always, had mentors in my life. I think the downside to it, though, which I'm just discovering now, is I don't know that I ever until right now accepted like I'm a man. I don't necessarily have to just always be submitting to some dude. I'm not a kid. So I think that that's the only thing is there, and I know you mentioned rite of passage. I would say that in that realm, there wasn't a distinct invitation for me to feel like I went from boy to man. And I would say that maybe that's happening over the last 3 years. But I don't know if that's just because I'm 39 and about to be 40 and have experienced life and that's just how it goes or what. But.
So I just turned 50 a couple weeks ago, and
dang, no gray hair.
Well,
it's for you.
It's because I got no hair.
It's called no hair.
I would be content with gray hair at this point. It's material to work with. I ain't got material. But it's interesting how as we approach each new season or each new phase, if we're open to it, there's gifts of reflection, there's gifts of learning. And John and I were using this language in a conversation not too long ago. When software rolls out, it's like Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. I've been referring to myself in this season as 2.0. It's probably more like 14.7 at this point.
Yeah, right.
But like going into these new seasons, you mentioned capacity, our capacity to understand, our capacity to grow, our capacity for awareness increases. And so then it's like the vision that we have, the view that we have can broaden and widen. And part of me is hearing that as you talk about going back through your dad's paper and his journal, like maybe just this greater awareness of who he was, who he is, and what that means to you is part of what you're uncovering. And it just so happens to be on the cusp of a new decade of life for you whenever that happens in the next 12 or less months. I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's kind of what I'm hearing coming through your story.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So Ned, I'm wondering, in your beginning stages of being a dad, if your father didn't have that spiritual element in his life, to give you and pass on to you, what resources or mentors helped you in sort of establishing the way you wanted to father?
Yeah, I mean, so I got married at 21, and then on our 1-year anniversary, so around 22, found out I was having my first kid, which happened, I was 22, 23-ish. But I felt ready to be a dad. I mean, my dad was such a great dad. He is still such a great dad that as far as being able to show up for my kid, I didn't have any worries about that. I think that my innateness was to go to work, so like a thing that my wife still gives me, because my dad did work a lot. to provide for us. And so that was, something my wife still gives me crap about. I think Brooklyn was born on a Friday and I was back to work on Monday, but that was like my innate, I'm provider and protector. And so in, California making six figures, that just means go to work, like I don't really got to protect for much. But then on the spiritual aspect, I mean, I was always a leader in youth group. I was, a youth pastor in the sense at the time. So feeling like I was equipped to lead a child, I felt fine in that aspect, like spiritually. I mean, there's been shifts in my own life as far as like at that time, I would say I was kind of in a little bit of a religious setting, like be at church every Sunday, where's your tithe check, stuff like that. So there's been phases or seasons, like you're talking about, Mark, that have definitely shifted over the last 16 years. And really, I just bring my kids along for that at this point. We talk about it. Hey, this is where I'm struggling around hell. What are all the options? What do you think? Does it matter? So I think at this season, I just bring my kids along with that. Because because I don't think it's ever going to be like, this is exactly how it's supposed to be. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not wishy-washy. There's some things for me that are like, this can't change. Mary was a virgin. Jesus came to this earth. Jesus is God, right? There's some things that I'll tell my kids, this is the way it is. But then there's other things that I'm like, you know what? That could shift. That's not like, otherwise, God would have made it a lot more clear. People have been wrestling over these questions for thousands of years. I'm not trying to put my stake in the ground on something that's just going to cause issues. So I don't know. That's kind of a tangent.
It's not a tangent. It's a beneficial rebellion against the rigidity of belief structures or religious institutional structures and definitions, and it's opening up to questions and dialogue and discussion, and showing your kids how to do it. You're living out loud in front of your kids and modeling for them what it looks like to ask questions and work through some of these answers.
Yeah. So a great question, that makes me go, I guess we are kind of rebellious, is, so church, to me, I still believe church is the answer. So does that necessarily mean Sunday morning? I don't know. Do we go Sunday mornings? Most of the time, but like in a rebellious aspect, when we're leaving church, one of the things I ask my kids on our drive home is, what did you agree with what you heard? And what do you not agree with what you heard and why? And just giving them this ability, like, hey, question these things in the sense that you can have an opinion on it. And you need to check your own spirit of like, what's going on. But that's a rebellious thing, not just to say, hey, kids, we don't read Harry Potter because the pastor said we shouldn't. But that's how I grew up, like not celebrating Halloween. And I mean, even in my early 20s, like telling my wife, dude, you shouldn't be reading these books because it was just so tied to the church telling me this isn't what we should do. And maybe they're right in some aspects of it, but the ability as a man, as a father, to lead my home and to bring my kids into a struggle, into a conversation, I think that's more what God wanted anyways. Otherwise, he'd make things a lot more clear. So I think the conversation is the beautiful part about it, right? That's where we grow and connect. And I think that's the point a lot of times.
And to connect
Ned, I want to see if I can make a connection here. Did you want to say something, Mark?
Well, just connecting it back to what you said, that's the difference between serving your family, serving who they're becoming, and just that authoritarian, dictatorial type of leadership. This is what we believe, and case closed. All you got to do is conform.
And I'll tell you, one of my most, I don't know where I've gained this from and I've struggled at it, but I want to be able to be friends with my kids and have conversation with them. And I want them to come and talk to me about, hey, this is going on in the world. And I, as any dad, we struggle with having too many opinions probably and having the answer right. So constantly trying to just shut my mouth. because they will figure it out. Right. Like they innately have what I have inside of me. So like, yes, I'm a guide, but a lot of times it's just like creating the space for them to think about it. Cause I need to do the same for myself. Um, and not having all the answers, but that's a tough one.
So Ned, I was looking on your website, and there was I forget what page I was on, but there was different bullet points of like things that you're after in the work that you're doing, and one of them said something like the crafting of fatherhood. And so I'm curious what we're talking about right now. I'm guessing it comes in somewhere in there in the crafting of fatherhood. Is that right?
Just that I believe fatherhood's a craft.
Well, I probably need to ask the question first. What's included in the crafting of fatherhood? Let's start there.
Oh, well, I mean, I think craft of fatherhood is more of a mindset. So all my stuff is about identity, not really parenting. But I think that if you want to master a craft, right, the idea is that fatherhood is a craft that is a calling on your life to master, which means like I don't know any great examples, but you take somebody who's like a world class whatever at 80 years old, they're still learning that craft. And so my invitation to myself and to men is understand this calling on your life to be a father is this craft that you get to master over the next 80 years. Your influence is probably going to be greatest when you're gone if you take this seriously. And so to me, that's really an exciting journey. And that's what I mean by when I'm talking about master the craft of fatherhood.
Got it. I read something completely different into it, which was I was assuming there's like if you want to do fatherhood well, here's how you craft it and looking for the different elements in it. That's what I was thinking was there. So
yeah, and you know what? I mean, that's a struggle that I have. And I think I actually, just had a big shift on this. But I mean, if you were to listen to my last 200 plus podcasts, I mean, you'd know I'm a believer just from small things. But as far as it being like, I'm a Christian podcast that hasn't been like at the forefront. So this idea of, hey, I have a master class or I have a course or I have a mastermind that you could come to on how to craft fatherhood. I've held back from that because I just haven't been sure how I would want to do it. But in the last, I don't know, in the last year, there's been this shift. Like I can't really talk about fatherhood or really help another dad understand who he is without the faith components. I mean, I cannot be a father without knowing that I'm fathered by God, that I was created with purpose and intention and love. And so if I were to create something around the crafting of fatherhood, that has to be your first understanding. It doesn't have to be. You could be a great dad and not.
sure.
But the understanding of who you are, and that's why, again, it's not parenting for me. You could be a great dad and not believe anything, but to really, truly know who you are, I'm just convicted that I'm a child of God, and so is everyone else. It's just, is anybody inviting them into that?
So I want to jump, I guess, well, let me say it this way. 2015, you have the crisis moment. 3, 4, 5 years later, you're on a stage presenting a talk in a TEDx environment about fatherhood.
Yeah.
So I'm curious from a couple angles. One, how did that come to be, and what was it like to prepare for literally that big stage that you were on?
So I remember sitting in church around the season of me not having the youth center. And for me, such a pull of going to church and being a Christian and all this stuff was that I had this thing God wanted me to do, this mission to build a youth center. So that got ripped away. So then I'm like, who am I? Oh, I'm just a dad. I'm just a husband who sells insurance, the most unsexy business for me, And I look around the church and I see a guy, he's a manager at a Target, and I see another guy, he's a plumber. I see another guy, he owns a construction business, and I'm like, why the hell are these guys here? Like they're doing their normal like life, but they're not pursuing a calling. Why are they here? So then it's like, well, why am I here? If why am I here if it's not for some major big Ned's really important calling? And so that's when I took the rebel and create concept and I wrote a book, because I realized, hey, there's probably a lot of men who are struggling with, like, what's my purpose? Missing that it's to be a father and a husband and lead your home primarily. So I wrote that book, and then at the time, like 2018, journaling was really kind of like, there's a lot of journals coming out, and I've journaled since I was 18. So I did a Kickstarter and made a journal in like 4 months. I wrote the journal, made it on Kickstarter, and printed it and delivered it in like a 4 month window. And it was fun, but nobody cared. It's like, most dudes aren't going to journal. They just are not. So I still have, hundreds of those just sitting. They're incredible, but nobody cares. Um, and so then around the time I wrote the first book, my coach at the time was like, start a podcast. So I started a podcast and was consistent. I think I have like 250 episodes now, which I love. That's probably my favorite thing, is have conversations with dudes. And then a friend of mine, Dwight, said, hey, there's a TEDx coming. You should totally do it. So I just submitted. There's like 300 applications. The theme was the hero's journey. And I submitted it that I wanted to do that as fatherhood. And they accepted me and 12 other people or something. And so then I put 120 hours into that talk. And that's not including like standing in the shower thinking, oh, this word or that word. This is like sit down at a computer or in front of a camera. And to me, it was one of the greatest opportunities to really clarify my message for myself. And it's like, I'm so proud of it just for me, because I showed up as 100% Ned, without any expectations, and it felt really good.
Listeners, you got to go watch this, because there's a visual element to the presentation that you will miss just in our conversation here. And I love how you start, and then within a couple minutes, it's like, oh, you're peeling back the layers, and here's the real Ned, but also giving us a real message. So we'll make sure that that's in the show notes for guys to go watch. There's an element of that I want to ask you about, and I'm more convinced now than I was before we started the conversation that I know what you're referring to. But in that talk, you tell a story of a father who's communicating love and approval and readiness to a son. I think I know what story you are referring to, but I'd love to hear you tell it from your vantage point, what the inspiration was for that story.
Yeah. So I believe a father's role is to invite their kid into life, right? Like, as a 40-year-old man, I want my dad to approve of me. I know that my words have incredible power over my son. And so this idea that as a father, you have this opportunity to invite human beings into life. It's not happening enough, because not a lot of men were invited into like manhood already, or a woman being invited into womanhood. Now, for a woman, I do think that there are some more obvious rites of passage, right? Like, okay, I now have my period. Now I'm pregnant. Like, there's some things in a woman's life that are pretty obvious rites of passage, whereas a man, not so much. And the world would say, like, go have sex, go get drunk, go whatever. So there's a real importance for men to be invited into manhood or life, right? And so I wanted to make that a component, because my whole message with the TEDx is to help a dude see who he is, and just hopefully spark him on a journey to start to go discover stuff like what you're creating and all these other groups and books and amazing things that are out there. So anyways, back to this. So I wanted to bring in a couple of biblical stories to my TEDx, but make them more, just like share the story. So I share a story, and it's cool. I can see it happening. Is I really envisioned my own son standing in front of me, and there's three things, right? Like, I I love you, I'm proud of you, and you have what it takes, right? So the story that I'm referencing is when Jesus goes and gets baptized by John the Baptist, and the sky opens up, and there's a crowd around, right? So there's a crowd around, and God says, "This is my son. This is my son." Like, I'm acknowledging you belong, and like, I want to belong, you want to belong, men want to belong. So he says, "This is my son," which is you belong, whom I'm well pleased with. Right? I'm pleased with you. You're amazing, just like you are. You haven't even done anything yet, and I'm pleased with you. And then you have what it takes, right? You're going off. You're going on this journey right now. Like, to me, that baptism is a rite of passage for Jesus to immediately shift from boy to now savior of the earth, right? Like, do I think that there was some sort of magical or spiritual, like, I don't think anything physical happened in that moment. I don't know, but it's this acknowledgement of this invitation. So, yeah. And I think every one of us wants that.
Dude, I love that. And that's exactly what I thought you were going to say, where that story came from. And I can't resist one more time describing how I see it. So this is Mark's translation, Mark's paraphrase. If Mark were to write a paraphrase, because for so long I heard the British deep monotone, "This is my son in whom I'm well pleased." Like, that's how I read that text for so long. And then in my own story shift, and in seeing the real father-son connection and applying that in my life as a father and receiving it in my life as a son, here's the way I translate it. That's my boy, and I'm proud of him. And when I say it that way, even now, man, I'm getting emotional. When I say it that way, it stirs something in me. And it's like, this is the Father that is speaking life to not only Jesus and what Jesus needed before he goes off into the desert and really begins that public ministry. And like you said, moving toward Jerusalem. But he's saying that to me. And he says that to you, and he says that to John, and he says that to our listeners, if we're willing to metaphorically stand in the water and receive that baptism from him. It's available to us too. And so I'll stop. I could keep going on and on. And like I said, it gets me charged up and emotional, but like, that's how I hear it, man. That's my boy, and I'm proud of him.
Yeah, it moves me. And I think that the opportunity that men have to see their boys or daughters, right? If I see you as a man, you are going to see yourself as a man.
Yes.
The problem is, not a lot of men see themselves as men now, right? So they got to just suck it up and make that shift and go, okay, I'm going to believe what Ned and Mark and John are saying. I'm accepting that I'm a man. I'm accepting that I'm God's kid. And now I'm going to give that gift to my kid. That's their opportunity.
That's right.
It's huge.
That's right.
In our world, if more men did that, our world would look and feel different.
I agree. 100%.
Well, to make the connection that you've already made, Ned, if they don't even know that story, that biblical story, it's hard to, take that context in. So it's just a reinforcement of the value of Scripture. And, as all the dads listening, take Scripture and figure out what it means for you and then pass it along.
Yeah. We need something to anchor ourselves to. It's just, and so I don't want to say go find whatever all paths lead, because I don't believe that. But you need something to anchor yourself to. And if you don't, then you're floating around. And Scripture is this ancient text with a whole bunch of, controversy around it, but that is an anchor that can set you up for a security that you may not feel right now.
So taking that thought into how you want to impact fathers, new fathers, young fathers, fathers that are in some stage of their own journey, let's shift to this book that you've got coming out here real soon. This month, actually, right? It's supposed to
February 14th.
Yeah. So the book is called Adventures of Fatherhood. I'll let you talk here, but I was excited by your idea when I heard you describe it as this: a resource, a tool that you can put in the hands of a new father that says, you're ready, you matter, and here's a way to help you. Like, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but that stirred something in me because I could see myself down the road having a stack of those. And as I'm encountering new fathers, putting it in their hands and saying, I believe in you, and here's how much I believe in you. I'm stealing your thunder. Adventures in Fatherhood. What's the inspiration? Who's it for? And what are you hoping to accomplish?
Yes. So this whole rite of passage and inviting a new dad into fatherhood has been this thing that over the past, it's 2023 now. So 8 years of me kind of on this journey of embracing my own fatherhood role and wanting to invite other dads in, and like how many dads are going to read a book, and how many dads are going to journal, and how many dads are really going to listen to, 200 podcasts or whatever, right? So I started making these new dad boxes, a gift for new dads. You could order one on the Rebel and Create website right now, which is actually going to change. But I started making these gifts for dads. But I didn't have a good centerpiece. So what I was doing is like, I'd get a box and I'd get maybe a bottle of whiskey or some cigars or, a great kids book or some Vans, like little boy or little girl Vans shoes, and just different things. I started making these kits, making these boxes. And then on the website, when you could order them, it would come with my journal. But it's like no new dad is going to get a journal and know what even to do. I don't even know what to do here. But I made some of these gifts and I gave them to friends, and they tell me, Ned, this was the only gift that I got. Right. And it's not this comparison, but my wife had a baby shower and then this other shower, and then she has this baby. So here's kind of the concept is like, I made this gift and I wanted to give it to dads, but I didn't have a centerpiece. And it wasn't really like, should I put a book in there like 12 steps to be a great dad? Or it just wasn't, I didn't feel like it would do anything. So as concepts went on, maybe a book with a bunch of stories from dads, like a tabletop book or something, I thought, I don't know, I'm going to make a children's book. The book is really written for the dad. So the book is called The Adventure of Fatherhood. And it starts off with a dad on a motorcycle with no helmet on, ripping through the desert, to then him finding a bride and getting married and dreaming about a kid, and then his kid's born, and then they go on 10 adventures together. And these 10 adventures are, the dad still has no helmet on, the boy has a helmet on. You're still a wild, badass man, rebellious, but you're bringing your kid along. Like, this idea that your life is over is not the case. Your life is beginning a new phase, a new amazing adventurous journey. And you have a very important role in this. So each of those 10 adventures is affirmation statements. I will teach you how to follow your dreams. I will show you how to serve. I will show you how to love. So it's these 10 affirmations of this incredible art, incredible father-son moments. And so that was the centerpiece that was going to go in this gift box, which is still going to be the primary thing I'm doing. But this book is now an invitation that you could simply hand a new dad this book and say, bro, welcome to fatherhood, man. You have what it takes. And it's a simple, easy to digest. It'd be easy for you to buy the book and hand it to somebody. It's not like you're handing the guy hey, 12 steps to be a great dad, or like something. This is just very easy to attain. And when you hold it, it looks so freaking beautiful and awesome. It's like it resonates with a dude. I'm so proud of it. I'm really excited. So I could go on and on and on, but maybe you have some questions from what I've said already.
Well, I love the way you said it, because you said it again the way I first heard it, bro. You're ready. I can't do it justice, man. But like that was it. That's what captured my interest. Like, oh yeah, I want to do that for young dads in my life, in my circle, even my own boys or future son-in-law when they become dads, just being able to put that in their hands and honor them and recognize them, affirm them. I love it, man. I love the idea. So thank you. Thank you for doing that for guys like me that can have a resource to be impactful for those young dads in our lives.
Yeah, that's the idea. The idea is I'm not trying to be all things. I'm just trying to be a little part on the initial piece of the journey and give other dudes an opportunity to invite guys in with just a really cool resource. And then my hope is that this book sits on the shelf and it creates opportunity for fathers and sons, which I'll have a father-daughter one. It's done. We're just gonna make it. It'll come out the end of the year. But that when a father sits down to read a book to his son at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, first off, the dad's like, when the kid says, "Hey, will you read me a book?" The dad's like, "Yeah, grab that one."
Mm-hmm,
Right? That one's
mm-hmm.
rad. And that the kid is also, "Hey, grab that one." Because if I'm sitting there reading it to my 4-year-old and I start off, I was one, it starts off, I was once wild. I was once wild. And it's just this dad on a motorcycle. It gives the opportunity. Hopefully the kid's going to say, "Hey, what did you do before you met mom?" And then the dad's ripping down the highway and there's this girl in a pink dress with her thumb out, and that's my wife. I met her on Mother's Day. She was wearing a pink dress. And and hey, how did you meet mom? Right? So it's this opportunity for a dad to share his story with the kid and it be connected to this book. So I'm so pumped about it. um I really think it'll serve as an opportunity for men to see who they are in a really simple, classic way.
I don't think much gets by you, Ned. So I have to ask this. Is there any significance to February 14th being the release date?
What's so funny is no, not at all. But something happened. Okay, so I've been such a freaking particular guy about this book. I mean, it was supposed to be out 60 days ago, but like the color of the paper just wasn't really what I wanted. So I made them send me 3 more copies of paper and it's like, okay, let's go with, I was really particular about it. So it kept getting pushed, the date. And then something happened, and I'd have to go look in my journal about what it was. But the day that I found out the published date was February 14th, um, something happened that day around love. And so I think it's fantastic because this idea that, I mean, the father is love, right? Like the father is love. I have such an opportunity in my home to either make my home a chaos and destruction or peace, love, harmony. Yes, moms are critically important, but we know this. Moms have been showing up for decades and fathers haven't in a lot of aspects. But if I show up in love in my home, there's a whole different realm of peace and stability. I'd say stability is like a huge one. And so I love it. I love that it's coming out on February 14th. I didn't choose that date. It just happened. And to me, that's just another little sign from God. Like, there we go. It's going to be good.
So Ned, you got this book coming. Like I said, I'm excited about it, and I hope it just blows up for you and impact. But for the guy that's listening, that is like, I don't know how to start. I don't know how to engage. I don't know how to really up my game as a father. I know, kind of like you said back in the day, I'm a good dad, but I'm leaving opportunities on the table. I'm giving more of my best outside of the home than I'm giving inside of the home. What would you suggest as a couple of steps? Maybe they're big, maybe they're small, maybe it's just one. Just some things that dad can do to take the next step forward in his fathering, and progress and grow his impact in his home.
Yeah, really good. Well, first off, I would say you have to go surround yourself with other people who are thinking like that. So it's one thing to listen to this podcast and maybe read a book and other podcasts, like fantastic. You're already here, so you already want it, but you got to go find other men who are doing it, and then not assume that because you're jumping into this desire to be a great dad that everything's going to look totally different in 6 months or a year. Like, this is your life. This is a journey you're going on. Just like if you wanted to be a great golfer, which is a lot easier because it's just all you focused, right? You'd have to put a ton of energy and time and effort into that for years and years and years and years and years. So same thing as being a dad. So go surround yourself. I'm in 3 groups right now that are incredible father groups. I wish I could do more, but I'm tapped at the ones I'm in. They're out there. There's these incredible groups where people are a part of, and they're growing together. So I would highly recommend going and finding your tribe and joining it, and then being a part of it. With that same sense, you have to create space. So if you're like, Ned, I don't have the ability to do that or whatever, you have to create space for yourself. So one of the most important things that I have done that have helped me be a great dad is go be by myself for 2 days a year. And then I try to do it a little bit even more often than that, is go be by myself and reflect, because the most important things surface, because I'm not distracted by TV or the kids got to get to jujitsu or, whatever. The most important things surface. And then if you do that often enough, you write those things down and you keep coming back to them and you say, well, it was really important to me to take my wife on a date every Thursday night. And then I look back 3 months later and it's like, oh, shoot, I only did it once a month. Well, that was still better than you were doing before. But then you reflect on it, right? And then, okay, create space to be by yourself. And then if you're willing to track your data, if you say these 3 things are important to me, dating my wife, spending time with my kid or whatever, track it and then reflect, put it on the calendar in 3 months. Did I do what I said I was going to do? Maybe tell a friend, hold you accountable. But those are 3 things I would say is 1, go find your tribe, 2, create space for yourself, and 3 would be track what you say is important.
Ned, you mentioned earlier you have a coach. So everything you just said sounds like somebody coached you into that. Not that that's actually how that happened, but it's very much in the wheelhouse of what is possible. What would you say the value is of coaching for dads?
If you want to get good at something, you have to get a coach. So, if I'm wanting to grow at my TEDx, I had 2 coaches help me with my TEDx, right? So if I want to show up and do a freaking outstanding job, I have to have somebody help me. It's stupid, like everybody hears you say it, but like the best athletes still have coaches, right? So getting a coach, and I remember the first time I got a coach, my friend did it for free. And then he stopped doing it, and I had to go to somebody else, and he was $500 a month. I'm like, dude, I could only afford 100. And he's like, I'll do it for 3 months, but if it's worth it at the end of 3 months, then I want the 500. At the end of 3 months, I'm like, dude, here's your 500 a month. To the point where I've paid coaches a lot more than that to coach me during different seasons of business or whatever it is. So having a coach is important, and but they're also not going to do the work for you. You got to do the work.
No, that's right. But to get that $500 value, it's worth it.
And
to
I'll
do
tell
the work
you,
yourself, right?
Yeah, and right now you might be hearing me say $500, and you might go, "Oh my, I couldn't even imagine." I know there's groups out there for $100 a month, or some good ones for $250 a month, where you're like more community setting, but you get what you pay for. And I know sometimes, especially growing up in the church, you might wrestle with like, this stuff should be free, or like always looking for the good deal, because that's how I have, like, my mindset around money has shifted a lot in the last 5 years. You get what you pay for, but also the other men who are there who are paying that same amount, they're in it just as much as you, which is sometimes different than like your 4 buddies from church who meet for coffee or breakfast. There's a different level of show up when you are paying for it, and that goes for everybody in the group. And also, when you're paying for it, the crappy idiots get weeded out a lot faster. So you end up being with dudes who are at a level that you probably want to be at. So you are we all hear it. You're a mixture of the 5 people you spend time with. So who are those people? And I did have a crappy mindset around that before. Like, that's so stupid to pay. That's so stupid to pay to be with those groups. But unfortunately, we don't live in a village anymore where we're surrounded by like this same tribe. You get to go build your tribe and really shift your mindset to think, I want it to be a paid for tribe, because then it weeds out. Not everybody can do this. If it's for everybody, it's kind of for nobody. So I mean, it's not, I don't have a paid group you can come to. I don't know about you guys, but there's so many out there. And I'll tell you this, like with the kids book, I kind of wrestle with, part of me wants to do some kind of mastermind, faith-based dads, but I've separated rebel and create an adventure of fatherhood. Because if I did do that, it would be on the rebel and create side. The adventure of fatherhood, I want it to, when you read the book, if you come to Adventure of Fatherhood site, I want that to be the place to go. Here's 1,000 groups. Which one's right for you? Here's 1,000 tribes. Which one's right for you? Go find it. Go find it. I want it just to be the spark for them to go on their own journey and not come to like Ned's group or whatever. So much bigger than that.
At least can I put a plug in that one of those groups be called "Don't Be a Crappy Dad"? Just using your language there. Can you create that? Create that group.
Don't be a crappy dad.
Don't
Show
be
up.
a crappy dad.
So I'm gonna take us back to a question that John asked toward the beginning and connect a theme. What you just described, the surrounding yourself either as peers or in a coaching environment, the setting the goals, measuring the goals, all of this is mastering the craft of becoming a good father. It's the practice time, it's the learning and the training from others. I'm picturing a musician, it's the concerts that you're a part of that you can do together. It's the hours upon hours upon hours on your own instrument and making mistakes and stretching yourself. Like that's the theme that has emerged throughout all of this, Ned, is that this is about mastering a craft, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be done by the time your kids launch. It's going to continue into the next season where you're parenting adults. And I think you said this early on, like some of your best stuff is probably going to be at the very end, or maybe even after you're gone. But that theme of mastering the craft of fatherhood is ringing loud and clear.
Yeah, one of the coolest things that I have done, and it's like a work section in the journal that I made, is to like put, okay, I'm 39 today. I hope to die at 100. And how old will my kids be at different stages? And then at what stage will they probably get married? And at what stage will they probably have kids? And then so kind of do that all the way to your deathbed. So imagine perfect case scenario, you're, in your house, in your bed, and your family's around. Who is that? Like, who's there? Is it, like my great grandkids are there with me? And who do I have to be and show up as today so that all 5 of my kids want to be there? Right? Like I didn't jack it up so bad. They're like not talking to me. Their spouses are there, their kids are there. And it really just gives you this view of like, one day, all 3 of us are going to be old men looking in the mirror. Like, do I want to look into my own eyes? And if I do, and what do I want to feel about myself, then it matters how I show up today. Like that guy's being built today by the way I talk to my kids and my wife. And in the TEDx, like one of the things that resonated the most with a lot of people is this idea of both dads are inside of me. The great dad, the great husband who like, oh, good morning, honey, you're so beautiful, to like, why'd you sleep in for 5 more minutes? The kids are late for school. I got to go to work, right? Both those dudes are inside of me. And sometimes both of them show up, right? I'm constantly wrestling these dudes. But this idea that that's okay to acknowledge that they're both in there and they're both going to show up. But the hope is that as I start to master the craft and understand myself and have a greater awareness of who I am, I show up as that, good morning, my queen. Like today, my wife walked out of the room The kids are in the kitchen making breakfast and doing their thing, and I pretended to play a horn. I'm like, boo, 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 the queen is awake. And it was like fun, but there's other times where I'll wake up and I'm like, what the heck, like I'm doing this by myself. I get selfish and lame, but I don't like that version of me very much. So I got to fight that guy.
I love it, man. I love it. So you've mentioned resources. You've mentioned a couple of sites. Before we close here, where can people find you? Where can they find the Rebel and Create book, the new book that's coming out? Like, give us where to go.
Yeah. Okay. So for my stuff, which is really just Ned's struggle through life, is rebelandcreate.com. You can go there. That's where you find the podcast, find the Rebel and Create book, the journal, whatever. That's there. The new book, Adventure of Fatherhood, that's the website, adventureoffatherhood.com. My hope and my gift to you is that it is a resource that and I really want to invite you to this, like whether you do this on your own or you use my book, I don't care, but you have an opportunity as a man, as a father now, that when other men, like we did say, go get mentors, but you have to be a mentor. When other men go have children, no one is inviting them into their role as a dad. So I bestow upon you, it is your job. No one else is going to do it. So when that dude has a kid, don't go in and give him a game over shirt or, hey, you can't have sex for 6 weeks, or say something stupid. Go give him a gift. Make it yourself, or go to adventureoffatherhood.com, buy this kid's book, buy the gift box, make your own gift box, and then give it to him. And it's simple. Welcome to fatherhood. You're going to be a great dad. You have what it takes. That's it. That's all you got to do. So simple. Anybody can do it. But the idea with adventurefatherhood.com is that you could buy the book, you could buy the gift box, and that then a dad would be invited into a place where he can ask questions without being ridiculed, and have a bunch of resources as a new dad, not for parenting, but for understanding who he is.
I love it, man. I love it. So good. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your gift to the fatherhood space, for the impact that you're having. And like I said, man, I hope it blows up. I haven't done my advanced order yet, but I will get myself at least a copy. And I already have a father in mind who is going to get that first one. So thank you. Thank you for being here today, for bringing the energy, for giving us some of your Hawaii time. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing. Just your love for fathers and every dude who's listening to this. Thank you for investing in yourself, showing up. Because I say this all the time, but like my daughters could marry your sons, and so it really matters how both you and I are showing up for our families today. So freaking go love your family well, and let's together build a legacy of love that will impact beyond our lifetime.
Right on, man. Right on.
Until next time.
Prior to our conversation, guys, I had not ordered the book. I have since, and I'm anxiously awaiting that copy arriving as soon as it's released. And as I said in the episode, I already know who the first person is that's going to receive a copy. I just love this idea of giving a gift to a young father and saying, I believe in you. You have what it takes. You're going to do a great job. Here's a gift to honor and recognize that. I hope that came through loud and clear I'm sure that came through loud and clear from the episode, because it was a point that I emphasized. But I wonder what came through loud and clear to you. What did you hear? What stood out to you? What resonated to you? What piece of information can you put into practice or into action to help move you toward transformation as a man and as a father? That's the goal of bringing these conversations to you. Once again, the guy's name is Ned Schaut. Fun to chat with Ned all the way from Hawaii. His website, again, is rebelandcreate.com. You can find him and his story and his journey there. The book The Adventure of Fatherhood can be found at adventureoffatherhood.com. We'll also have these in the show notes, plus his TED Talk. I encourage you to go watch that. It's 16, 17, 18 minutes of time worth investing just to see how he brings the importance of fatherhood to life through his talk. All resources available for you in addition to whatever surfaced for you to go do. That's the invitation, and that's the challenge, guys. So if you've made it this far, I know you're the type of guy that wants to squeeze everything out of each episode all the way to the end. So here's a heads up for you. Next episode will be our final episode. There's more to this story to come in the next episode, but the next one will be our last one. A big announcement. You're hearing it here first. So make sure you come back for next week, our finale episode. We got a special version planned for this final one as we wind down the Next Man Up podcast. So one last time for this episode, I'll be able to say same bat time, same bat channel next week, guys. Until then, adios. To send us your comments or questions, you can email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. The theme music is by Jacob Stanifer at Jacob Stanifer Music, and this show is part of the NRT Podcast Network.